All right, and we are live. What is going on, my specialist SPC here, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Midwest Cantina podcast. You guys, I really did honestly debate on if I even wanted to do this as an actual podcast or if I wanted to just wait for the entire series. But I mean, I got to be honest, just the way this show has been for the last basically week and a half, it's been out already. We're 3 episodes in. I'm blown away by this show. I love honestly just like how cinematic it is. Like it really just it feels like you're honestly watching a movie more than you're actually watching a TV show. Just with how big the production feels, just the way everything is scoped in this show so far. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm blown away, like completely blown away so far. Hang on, guys, I got one little thing I need to do here. Sorry. Okay. So, just gonna send this up, and I'm gonna put this up right now. This is a spoiler warning. So, if any of you guys who end up joining, or if you guys are watching this later on, if you guys haven't watched the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, I am going to be talking spoilers about all 3 episodes. And I might touch in a little bit on some of the controversy too that is going on behind the scenes of the show so far as well. But we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But this is your guys' spoiler warning. I'll probably just leave this up here for a little bit. So if we just start talking about episode 1, it starts out with Order 66. And I mean, there's a Jedi Master. She is out on the balcony or wherever. She's training some, I think it's like 6 Padawans or something, I think it is. All of a sudden, some clone troopers come through the door, try to kill the Master. And of course, obviously, Order 66 happens as it, of course, happens. I was kind of curious why that was the very first thing they showed, but I kind of have a theory about that, so I'll get into that here in a little bit whenever I actually get to it. But then we jump to 10 years later. We see Obi-Wan, of course, as a hermit living on Tatooine, watching over Luke. I don't really know what he is. I don't know if he's like a butcher. I don't know if really exactly what he's doing. All I know is he's cutting up meat. He always ends up cutting off a little piece for his. I don't know what the creature's called, but I guess we'll just say his whatever space camel. There we go. We'll call it that, space camel. So he brings a space camel some meat every time. Rides back into Mos Eisley. Ends up walking all the way back out into the desert. And it's just kind of how he lives his life day by day. He goes in and also just checks on Luke every once in a while. He's also doing trades with Jawas. And apparently the Jawas as well are also taking his stuff and trying to resell it back to him. They're talking about how they were raiding a Jedi ship that crashed, and comes to find out actually that Obi-Wan is not the only Jedi on Tatooine. Because at the actual beginning of the show, after the Order 66 scene, we get the 3 Inquisitors. We get, I think it's the 5th brother, who's played by Sung Kang. If you guys don't know who Sung Kang is, he plays, I think his name is Han in the Fast and the Furious franchise. We also get Reva. I don't remember which sister she is. I get confused with all the Inquisitors, like what number they are, what sister, brother, all that stuff. But we get Reva, and we also get the Grand Inquisitor, who going to be honest. I didn't have a lot of high hopes when I saw him in the trailers because he didn't look that intimidating. But he's a lot like Moff Gideon. That's kind of what he reminds me of. Like with Giancarlo Esposito, all he really needs to do is just talk, and he gets his point across. Not only that, but just how he words things and the tone of voice that he uses. It's it comes across, and that's how it is with this show as well with the Grand Inquisitor. Of course, if you guys have watched Rebels, obviously you know the Grand Inquisitor is the main villain for at least the very first season. Again, spoiler warning, as I just ruined it here for you. But then the other Jedi ends up being found because one of the people inside of the tavern, the bar, however you want to word, cantina, is being attacked. And of course, you know, Jedi, they can't just, you know, sit there and let things happen like that. So he ends up exposing himself, ends up saving the guy, running off. And of course, we get back to Obi-Wan once again, doing his usual thing. Later on comes, the guy ends up coming to find Obi-Wan. Wow. Ends up going to find Obi-Wan, who at this point in time has changed his name. He is just known as Ben. It's just Ben. Obi-Wan is gone for all he knows. The Jedi says, what happened to you? You used to have so much fight, so much spirit. I'm going to take this off now, guys. Sorry. You used to have so much fight. You know, you used to be this great Jedi. And Obi-Wan just tells him, you know, stay hidden. Forget the Jedi ever exist. Forget you ever saw me, all that stuff. But actually before that, a nice little Easter egg from A New Hope. I don't know if any of you guys even remember, but right after Luke and Uncle Owen after Luke and Owen end up getting 3PO and R2, while 3PO is in the back getting cleaned up, Luke's playing around with this little ship that he got. And apparently he got it from Obi-Wan because that's how he gets it in the show. He ends up trading off some stuff to the Jawas, and that's how he ends up getting that ship. Drops it off at Luke's place, has the run-in with the other Jedi, goes back to his hut, and he ends up having nightmares. I don't know if it's every night. They haven't really explained that much, but he ended up having a nightmare about, you know, Order 66, everything that happened on Mustafar, remembering all the great times he had with Anakin and all that. It's a heartbreaking scene because he wakes up after that, and he's trying to reach out to Qui-Gon. Because, of course, on this time, you know, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda says, training I have for you. And obviously he's trying to learn to communicate with Qui-Gon, trying to find ways to become one with the Force when it's his time. And it's heartbreaking because, you know, like you kind of sit there and you're like wondering, like, is it going to happen? Are we going to hear Liam Neeson's voice? And yet I'm not getting nothing. It's kind of sad. I don't know if maybe you're going to get a scene with him appearing at some point. I'm hoping we do because, I mean, to me personally, you can't have an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, especially at this time in the timeline, you know, but literally straight between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. I mean, to me, it would work a lot better. Obi-Wan goes to town the next day. Uncle Owen throws the toy that he left for Luke. Tells him, I told you to leave us alone, Ben. And I got to be honest with this part. Even when I saw it in the trailer, I'm not going to lie, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, you know. But, you know, Obi-Wan looks at him and says, you know, when the time comes, he must be trained. And then Uncle Owen comes back with, oh, like you trained his father. Because of you, Anakin is dead. That's a line that's bothered me since the very first trailer came out for the show, because while it is true that, if Qui-Gon was still alive, Anakin probably never would have turned to the dark side. But Obi-Wan was taught by Qui-Gon. So I would assume that, Obi-Wan Luke, wow, taught Anakin like the same ways that he was taught by Qui-Gon. Obviously, Qui-Gon, was not a part of the Jedi Council. He actually believed more in the Force, not that the Force should be the guide, not the Jedi Council. And I would agree with that. I do think that's one of the things that definitely makes Qui-Gon, honestly, a much better Jedi than a vast majority of the Jedi. But that's just my take on that. Uncle Owen's life ends up becoming in danger because the Inquisitors return. They sit there and threaten everybody, saying that we know the Jedi is here. Reva comes up and threatens to kill Owen. And eventually, they just decide to leave. And of course, Reva, she wants to sit there. She wants to interrogate. She wants to make these people scared. And then on what, I'm going to be honest, the thing that surprised me the most about this show, I had no idea this was going to happen. And it's actually been a very pivotal part of the show so far, is we go to Alderaan and we have a young Princess Leia as a young 10-year-old child. She's got herself a little droid. She's running off into the woods by herself, playing pranks on her mother and everything like that. And I'm like I said, I'm surprised. I didn't think that they were going to involve Leia in here at all. But I will admit, the young actress who plays this young Princess Leia, I think she's doing a very good job. I can 100% believe that this young little girl eventually grows up to become Carrie Fisher's version of Princess Leia. But, she ends up, betraying her mother a little bit, going to this dinner with her other family, and she ends up reading their minds with the Force. Like, she can just look at them and she just says all this stuff, and they end up looking at her like, how do you know this? Like, how? Later on, she ends up running into the forest and she gets captured. I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're like bounty hunters, if they're smugglers, what they really are, but they end up getting Leia and they end up taking her to try and lure out Obi-Wan. And Bail Organa returns and reaches back out to Obi-Wan and says, hey, I need your help. I need Obi-Wan Kenobi. I need his help one more time. Save my daughter. And Obi-Wan, he's just, since everything that happened on Mustafar, he's just lost his entire will to want to fight. And he says, I can't do it. Obi-Wan goes out for another day, the same thing he's been doing. Returns back to his hut. Bail Organa is there and tells him, again, I need your help. I need Obi-Wan. And he's sitting there saying that, oh, no, my daughter's just as important as Luke. Like, basically saying that, Leia's more important than Luke, which here or there, you can take that however you want about who's actually more important to this specific storyline. Obi-Wan returns to town. The Jedi has been killed by the Inquisitors and is literally hanging almost as a prize, almost as like a symbol of any more Jedi, this is what's going to happen. Or if you're going to hide a Jedi from us, this is what will happen to you. And that's when Obi-Wan finally gets to fight back. He goes out into the middle of the desert, locates a box, opens it up, and there's his lightsaber and Anakin's lightsaber side by side. And he goes to a transport, and the lady looks at him, "Are you coming?" And right before the ending credits, Obi-Wan moves over his robe, and you see his lightsaber hanging from his belt. I know I kind of just like summarize what happens. I mean, it's a little hard to like talk entirely spoilers without like just telling you guys to go watch it, to come back and go down into the comments and start just, let's start interacting and all that stuff. I mean, it's kind of hard, but you guys kind of get it, I would hope. The second episode, we are on this mysterious planet. I cannot remember what the planet's name is, so please forgive me for that. And Obi-Wan, he's walking around trying to find information. Ends up running into a few different people, asking for them, and they're like, "Yeah, you don't do that around here. You're just asking for trouble." And there ends up, he hears a guy, "Oh, any spare credits?" And he turns over, and it is a very, very aged clone trooper, a 501st clone trooper as well, played by Temuera Morrison. He's got a big burly beard out to here. You can tell his armor is very weathered. Honestly, that just blew me away seeing Temuera Morrison in the show. I mean, we heard he was going to be in the show. Everybody thought he was going to come back and maybe be part of a flashback, being like Commander Cody, or if they're actually going to do it, maybe have like an actual legit episode of a flashback with like Anakin and Obi-Wan, maybe even Ahsoka, I don't know, maybe Captain Rex, maybe Commander Cody. I don't really know exactly what the for sure outcome is of this show. I mean, we still got 3 more episodes left. We got 2 episodes the previous Friday here, and we just got the new episode yesterday. So, I mean, there's still a lot that can still happen in this show. He ends up hearing word of another Jedi. I'm going to use that very lightly here. Obviously, you guys will find out here in just a moment, but ends up meeting this Jedi who isn't a Jedi at all. He's just a faker. He's just a con artist. He's using magnets, and he's on the intercom with certain guys to do certain things at a specific time, so it looks like he knows how he's using the Force, and he's reading their minds and all that stuff. Again, I do not remember this actor's name, but he's also a comedian. He has been in quite a few shows. He was just in the recent Eternals movie from last year. This might sound horrible, but I don't mean this in like a racist way, but he's an Indian actor from like India. So this is Kamal. I don't remember what his name is, but anyway. Obi-Wan confronts him. He sees what he's doing. He knows he's not really a Jedi. He ends up basically forcing him to help him. And he receives the information he needs. He ends up finding Leia. And he surprisingly doesn't use any of his Jedi tricks at all. He just kind of shows up, has a disguise on, does a couple of little things here and there for distractions. Finds Leia, ends up getting taken away. And they finally go off together. And believe it or not, the head bounty hunter is played by Flea. Now, if any of you guys have ever seen Back to the Future's Part 2 and 3, he plays, his name is Needles, if you guys remember that at all. But Obi-Wan ends up going throughout the city, trying to hide, slowly kind of starts letting Leia in a little more. She ends up reading his mind every once in a while too, saying, "You're hiding something from me. Everything you're saying isn't true." She ends up eventually finding out that, he's in pain with everything that's happened to him over the years. How he is just so just broken, so destroyed. She ends up giving him even just a little bit of advice too, and ends up kind of making him feel a little better. And their relationship definitely expands so much more too when you start getting into the next episode. But then you have Reva, who she is just hell bent, and nobody really still knows what the deal is. It has yet to be revealed. I can tell you that is that without spoiling anything for you, but she's trying very hard to find Obi-Wan, and nobody's really getting anything done for her. So she ends up basically going behind all the Inquisitors' back to try and find Obi-Wan. Grand Inquisitor isn't a fan of that. He tells her to stand down, give up, let him go. They will find him. And when she goes behind their back, she goes and makes a transmission saying all available bounty hunters find Obi-Wan Kenobi. And of course, now everybody has his face, everybody with a hologram on their arm or just holograms all around. Obi-Wan is now in mortal danger, as well as Leia. And of course, throughout the course of them trying to get to this transport ship, they get sidelined, sideswiped, however you want to word it, I guess. Blindsided there, that's the word. They get blindsided by a handful of troopers, or bounty hunters, sorry. My head's all in a jumble, guys. I've been thinking about this show a lot here the last, 10 days. And while he's completely cornered by one specific bounty hunter, because they're up on the roofs, because Leia thinks that he's been lying to her this whole time about, oh, you don't really know my father, you just want to take me as well. So she runs off once again. They end up running on the roofs. Obi-Wan gets completely gunned down, basically pinned down. Again, guys, sorry, I'm a little rusty with this, so forgive me. But he ends up getting pinned down by a bounty hunter, two bounty hunters, and Reva ends up hearing everything. And this to me was the dumbest part of this entire episode. She's going throughout the rooftops. She's doing all these parkour moves and all that. I don't understand personally, but that's just me, I guess. Sorry, guys. Anyway, but Obi-Wan tells Leia to jump. She ends up missing where she's supposed to go. Grabs onto a line that's there, ends up falling. And Obi-Wan, who has barely used the Force in the last decade of his life, musters up every ounce of energy that he can, and he uses the Force to stop Leia from falling. Because, of course, he says, oh, I'm a Jedi. She's all, can you make me float? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you make stuff move? Well, she ends up floating here later on in the episode. She finally gives back in. She's like, okay, I'm sorry. They make their way up to the transport. And, of course, Reva is just hot on their tail. The Grand Inquisitor ends up finding out that Reva has basically gone behind his back to have all these bounty hunters find Obi-Wan for her. When they get up to the actual transport ship, Leia goes in, and Reva is up there as well. Obi-Wan trying to distract her. And while he's hiding, she's sitting there basically taunting him, saying, Obi-Wan. And then that is when Obi-Wan finally gets the revelation from Reva that Anakin Skywalker is alive. Because she brings up the name Vader. And she could just feel it through the Force that, like, doesn't believe it, like, he's in shock. She's like, oh, you didn't know Anakin Skywalker is alive. He's been looking for you. And then he finally gets away, gets on the transport. The transport takes off. And he's just sitting there in just complete and utter shock. Just, he cannot believe it. Literally, the last frame is just a close-up of Ewan McGregor's face in just total shock, total depression. He just says, Anakin. But before we actually get that scene, which doesn't make sense to me either, but the Grand Inquisitor confronts Reva about what she's done behind his back. And Reva stabs him in the stomach. I don't know if they're going to reveal that. I don't know much about, like, his race. I've heard something about they have, like, 2 stomachs or something, so I don't know about that. But the Grand Inquisitor is now dead, which I find kind of weird because I'm pretty sure Rebels takes place like a good maybe 5 to like 10 years after all of this. So I don't know. But now I want to talk about episode 3, which I will say as of now, I mean, right now it's my favorite episode of the entire series right now. I feel like it's obviously going to change because, we got 3 episodes left. And, I mean, it was already announced by Kathleen Kennedy that we were supposed to be getting 2 duels between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader in this series. Well, I can tell you this. We got 1 in this episode. If you honestly really want to call it a duel, I don't know. We'll get into that in a little bit, though. But Obi-Wan and Leia make their way to this new planet. All I remember, it's in a mining system. But they arrive. They're supposed to find this specific person who, like, hides Jedi. And they get there. There's nobody there. They have to go on a long walk to get to where they need to go. And while they're going, Obi-Wan's starting to see things from what happened. Out in the distance, he thinks he sees Anakin with his hood up in a Jedi robe. Leia asks him, what's wrong? What's going on? He looks back over. Nobody's there. And then we get to this probably one of, honestly, moving up right now as one of my, like, all-time favorite scenes in all Star Wars. We get to where Darth Vader is. They're slowly putting him together. They're putting on his arms, putting on his legs, putting on his respirator, putting on his mask. And we get to see a full shot of Darth Vader walking. And he is in his castle on Mustafar. And I got to say, guys, this looks so good. I personally think it looks a lot better than it did in Rogue One. Because you do get to see it in Rogue One for a little bit. And when it actually comes time for him to start speaking, because Reva's there on a hologram talking to Vader about, we had Obi-Wan, he's gone now. You hear the legendary voice of James Earl Jones once again providing the voice of Darth Vader, which, I gotta be totally honest, if they wouldn't have gotten James Earl Jones to do the voice for Vader, I'd have been extremely disappointed personally, but that's just me. He says, find him. If you find him, it'll be worthwhile. If you don't, it's not going to end well for you, basically. Obi-Wan and Leia end up finding another transport of this guy who transports stormtroopers back and forth to certain bases. He ends up stopping, picking them up after they drive for a while, after Leia and Obi-Wan have a bit of a heart-to-heart about, Leia's real mom, obviously, of course, is Padme. He kind of just tells him, like, oh, my family, I don't remember my family. I remember my dad's hands. I remember my mother's hair. And I remember a baby. I must have had a little brother or something. And then they pick up 4 stormtroopers. Stormtroopers end up hopping on this transport as well, talking to them, asking them a bunch of questions. They're farmers. They're on their way back to where they came from. I don't remember what the name of it is. I think it was like Tarl or something. They started with a T, but anyway. Obi-Wan ends up slipping, saying that her name is Leia, but they have different names, little incognito names or whatever. And after he calls her Leia, Stormtrooper ends up going, "You called her Leia." And he's like, "Oh, it's my wife who passed away. That was her name. I get them confused. I'm just so distraught. I'm so whatever." Literally barely saves them from getting caught. Stormtroopers get off. This guy keeps going until they get to another, basically like a checkpoint. A couple more stormtroopers tell them, oh, get off. And a probe droid comes up and starts scanning them. And they tell him, Obi-Wan, to lift his head because he's got his hood on. Looks up, barely gets a scan of his face. Obi-Wan blasts him, kills a couple of stormtroopers who were there. And it turned out that the probe droid got his face identification out and sent to the Empire. So now Reva, the 5th brother, and the other Inquisitor, who I don't know nothing about her. I don't know who she is. I've never seen her before at all in the show. They send out the beacon. They end up getting troopers out there and everything. And they inform Vader, too, that he is there. So, after the whole little shootout with all the stormtroopers, an Imperial officer comes out with a bunch of other stormtroopers. The officer guns them all down. And you end up finding out that that's who they're supposed to be there to meet. So they ended up, getting caught or however. I don't remember really how she worded it. Oh, I was running late. We were running behind. So she takes them to the hideout where she's been hiding all these other people, Force sensitives. They all have like little writings on the wall from where they are. And it turns out apparently Quinlan Voss at one point in time stopped by. I don't know a lot about Quinlan Voss. It's probably in some of the seasons of Clone Wars that I didn't watch because, once again, I stopped watching Clone Wars after like the 3rd season because I was just getting bored. But then nighttime falls, and the Inquisitors and Vader all arrive on the planet. And Obi-Wan can feel it. He can sense it. And literally, you guys, like the whole remainder of this episode, it honestly felt like a horror movie to me. Vader's just slowly walking down closer and closer to the hut that they're hiding in. He's pulling out innocent people. He's just choking them. Down on the ground is a guy. He just walks by, breaks his neck for absolutely no reason. Obi-Wan tells, I don't remember her name, we'll just say the helper, to take Leia. Obviously tells Leia to, I'll be right behind you. And he starts leading Vader farther and farther away. In which we get, honestly, one of the most epic standoffs I've ever seen in Star Wars. Obi-Wan goes into the middle of this, like a little factory, it looks like. Vader is there, activates his lightsaber, and Obi-Wan just stares at him in complete and utter horror. Cannot believe that Anakin Skywalker is still alive. Looks at him and says, "What happened to you?" And obviously, of course, Vader, still being very enraged about what happened on Mustafar, says, "This is what you have made me." Obi-Wan continues to run. And Vader is hot on his trail and just says, "You cannot hide from me." At which Obi-Wan finally, after 3 episodes, finally activates his lightsaber. And really, like I said, I cannot really consider this a duel. And if I'm being completely honest with you, because Vader's just swinging his lightsaber at Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan, who has just been hiding for 10 years, not doing anything like he normally would do. Not using the Force, not using his lightsaber, anything like that. He's basically completely outmatched. Like, there's basically like no way possible that Obi-Wan is going to survive this at this rate. Once they get to another specific area, Vader uses the Force, and these, I don't know what they are, they're crystals or what they really were. But he ends up knocking all those over, holding Obi-Wan up in the air, and he ends up lighting it all on fire, and he just slams Obi to the ground and starts dragging him through the fire. At which, at this point, the person who's supposed to be helping Leia said she'll be fine, she'll head out. She's sitting up there with a blaster and ends up killing a couple of stormtroopers, and her droid goes down, grabs Obi-Wan, gets him out of there. And man, I gotta say, this shot of Vader with the side of his helmet all like lit up by the fire, it was intimidating to watch. It was an intimidating scene to see. I cannot wait to see what else Hayden Christensen can do as Darth Vader in this series. Like, I cannot believe how almost how much like David Prowse he really is. Like, the way he walked, the way he did all of his lightsabers and everything. Like, I have got to say, that was just some scary stuff. MJV Dragon Slayer, what's up, man? Vader was just toying with Obi, enjoying his fears. Yes, that is for sure. Especially, like I said, just the way he was being chased down. Like, you could tell, like, Kenobi was just petrified at the fact that Anakin is still alive. And it was almost like a slasher villain was just after him. He was just enjoying, like, the hunt. Seeing what it's almost like, to a degree, I guess we could say, of being an Inquisitor. Because, of course, Inquisitors are former Jedis who went to the dark side, and now they're hunting their own kind. Which reminds me, I have to also talk about my theory I talked about at the beginning of the podcast. I think one of those children were Reva in the Order 66 scene. It would just make the most sense because there is, again, not to sound racist, so I hope I don't offend anybody, but there is a young girl with braided hair who's also an African American in that scene. So my only assumption is Vader was there, and maybe he was able to like twist her to come to the dark side. And maybe Obi-Wan was there and like didn't save her or something. That's the only thing I can assume. I don't really know yet. Again, we've got 3 episodes left. So, I mean, at this point, the show could pretty much go anywhere at this point. So now I kind of want to just like rate the episodes of how I feel about them. Obviously, I've talked quite a bit about them. I'm hoping to get. I hate doing this because I hate like saying stuff like this, then it ends up not happening. But I hope I can. I'd like to get a group of guys together and talk about the Kenobi series and like kind of just rate them how I like them. But I'd say right now, episode 1 is probably about a 9. Episode 2 is probably about an 8.5. And I'd say this last episode's like a solid 9, maybe like a 9.25. Because I do have some problems with the episodes. They're obviously not going to be perfect all the time. But once again, as I said at the beginning, I love how cinematic this is. It feels more like you're watching a film than you're actually watching a TV show. I'm excited to see what else is going to happen. I'm very much looking forward to more performances, of course, by Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Moses Ingram. I want to see where the series goes. I want to see how we eventually get to the Obi-Wan we get in A New Hope. Because obviously that Obi-Wan at that point kind of ends up getting a little bit more of a perk back. And I want to also see if this last lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Vader ends up being somehow better than the one we got on Mustafar. I don't think it'll happen because I'd say overall that's still the best lightsaber duel in all of Star Wars. The best emotional one. It's tied between the two, between Luke and Vader. I mean, we could go on about that all day long. But guys, I think that is probably going to do it here for this episode. I'm looking very much forward to seeing how the remainder of the series goes. Make sure you guys go down below in the comments section. Let me know what your guys' thoughts about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Has it been your favorite thing from Disney Star Wars? Do you like it more than The Mandalorian? Or is this maybe even on par with the original trilogy? Either way, let me know down in the comments section below. And with that being said, you guys, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you in the next one.